All right, here we are on the Football Lounge, here with our Week 14 recap. If you didn't check out our Friday episode where we covered the very riveting action between the New England Patriots and the Pittsburgh Steelers, please go check it out because I spent a good deal lamenting the Pittsburgh Steelers, or at least as I know them right now. But a lot happened here in Week 14, some shakeups in the divisional standings and the playoff seedings, and that's going to be the case for the next 4 or 5 weeks as we get ramped up to the final, uh, the season finale here in the NFL. So, Mark, I'll toss it to you for any takeaways from this week before we launch ourselves into this recap here.
Well, listen, if you thought last Thursday was tough with Mitch Trubisky versus Bailey Zappi, have I got a plate of doo-doo for you? Easton Stick versus Aiden O'Connell this Thursday night. Get ready for it. Week 15 is going to start off with a literal poop yourself bang. It's just like a good God, why do we watch it? But it's football, baby. So of course we're going to watch it. Listen, Dan, I think the thing about this week, I think there's two things to take away from Week 14 that I know we're going to get to right now. The season's not over, so we all want to jump right away now to the Cowboys are going to win the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? The Chiefs stink. The season is not over. You got a lot of games left. And also, I think the other thing to really think about overall is that log jam in the AFC. The wild card spots in the AFC, how many teams are who's going to rise above it all? It's so hard to predict right now. So crazy to look at. Joe Flacco maybe the man who's playing the best football of all of those 7-6 teams. The dude who wasn't even on a roster until 3 weeks ago may actually have the Cleveland Browns being a team that has a legitimate chance in the AFC with how messy the AFC has become. That's what we're dealing with right now as guys who are trying to analyze football and talk about football. I got to start thinking about Joe Flacco leading a team to the playoffs. He wasn't even on a roster 3 weeks ago. So you got to pivot. You got to be ready and willing to pivot. And also, I think the biggest thing is season's not over. These were some bad losses for Philadelphia and for the Kansas City Chiefs, but that by no means that we may not still have a rematch of the Super Bowl last year and this year's Super Bowl. Philly and KC aren't dead yet.
Yeah, some of these teams, the ones you just mentioned right there, are going to be probably just fine. They're just hitting a rough patch, which a lot of teams do, at this point of the season. But obviously, it's not a great time for that to happen for some of these teams as they're pushing for potential 1 seeds that are now starting to slip out of their grasp. Philly, in particular, moving themselves to the 5 seed this week. But yeah, there were 2 teams, the Dallas Cowboys and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the only 2 this week that pushed themselves into the division lead. Everyone else kind of stayed the same. But as we mentioned, some overall playoff seedings did shuffle. But, big kudos to Dallas and Tampa Bay as they put themselves in the driver's seat as we get closer and closer to the 2023 NFL postseason.
Transform your body into a canvas of exquisite storytelling and profound self-expression with the skilled hands of Ryan Allison. Craft custom masterpieces that tell your unique story together. Ryan specializes in color tattoos as well as black and gray. He also practices a diverse range of styles, whether you're passionate about anime, fantasy, mythology, pop culture, video games, movies, the esoteric, nature, creatures, dot work, black work, or you have your own ideas. Ryan embraces your distinct vision with an unwavering commitment to passion, precision, and originality. Each project he undertakes is a labor of dedication, a fusion of research, artistic ingenuity, and profound symbolism. His commitment to authenticity is nothing short of remarkable, infusing his very soul into every creation. From half and full sleeves to bodysuits, awesome back pieces, to majestic front panels, Ryan is the artist for anyone seeking powerful, breathtaking artwork. With every stroke of his needle, he weaves a tale that's as unique as you are. Don't settle for ordinary tattoos when you can elevate your ink to the extraordinary with Ryan Allison. Embark on your creative journey by booking a consultation with him and proudly exhibit your story on your skin. Visit Ryan at Why Not Ink Studio in North Park Mall, or check out his portfolio online at ryanallison.art. Ryan Allison Tattoos. When you choose me, you're not just getting a tattoo, you're getting an experience.
All right. So as we mentioned, a lot of action here in Week 14 to get.
We got the full Kadarius Toney experience last night.
Oh, good lord, we really did, huh? And quite the post game shenanigans that ensued afterwards too. We're gonna get to that for sure when we talk about one of the biggest games of the weekend slate, being the Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. But to your point that you kind of started off with there about the upcoming Thursday night game. Man, Amazon Prime just can't seem to get out of its own way, huh? I mean, last year was such a bad run, and obviously they were dedicated to making year two that much better and more impactful. And on paper, coming into year two, it looked like they had a much better lineup and were able to secure some better matchups. And then, of course, injuries happened and other things that forced some of these matchups to being just anything but compelling and interesting. And man, it's just unfortunate for them because I'm sure preseason, Raiders, Chargers at least looked like it could be two playoff teams, two divisional teams, going at each other. And now it's, Aiden O'Connell and Easton Stick. How about it?
It's brutal.
All right, let's get to the games. We already discussed that we talked about Thursday night, so no need to rehash any of that. But the Buccaneers at the Falcons will start with one of those division shakeups as the NFC South now has a new leader in Tampa Bay. Atlanta had control of their own destiny the remaining month plus of this NFL season, but now they're going to need to put themselves back in contention via some wins and a Tampa Bay loss. But the Bucs get a 29-25 victory over Atlanta. Pretty good game, some back and forth action there, but Cade Otton gets a big time touchdown in the fourth quarter as Baker Mayfield and company kind of rally the troops, if you will. Atlanta scored late, took the lead, and it looked like that they were going to be the winners, but Baker Mayfield and company are able to march down, and Atlanta at the end, even though they had a 30-yard Hail Mary attempt, if you can even call it that, wasn't able to finish it off. So a 29-25 victory. And now, Mark, after, I certainly had Tampa Bay as one of the worst teams in the league coming into the season. They're now a playoff team as we sit here today.
Give them a ton of credit for continuing to fight. It feels like both them and Atlanta have had times during this season where it was time to write them off, and then they've battled back, and now here they are sitting Tampa Bay ahead of the NFC South. No one wants to win the division. I thought we'll get to the Saints game. I thought the Saints showed some real life this weekend too. Like they did what they were supposed to do, like beat up on a bad team, right?
They needed
the Panthers. Bad. Yeah, the Panthers being the only team in the NFC South that's not in competition. Listen, I think this is just going to be that division. It comes down to every one of these teams is going to be under 500 going into that final week of just being like, all right, whoever wins the last game kind of wins the division, de facto gets a playoff game. But more importantly, what I'll say is for in the long-term look at a win like this, if Tampa can ride this out and Tampa can find a way to win this division, they're going to feel a lot like the Seahawks of last year, where it's like kind of surprise. None of us really saw this coming. And what that could mean for their certain players getting contracts. Could Baker get that Geno Smith 3-year type of extension where we're going to ride with you, Baker, but we're probably going to draft a quarterback, but we like that you're an adult in the room who can use our playmakers now. A team that we all were convinced should blow it up is still hanging around. And I got to give credit to Todd Bowles. I've never been a big Todd Bowles guy. This is a heck of a coaching job to inspire your team and to play this type of football with in this bad division to still be in it. And for Arthur Smith, feels like when his offense struggles, his defense plays great. When his defense plays great, his offense struggles. And it's just one of those, another flip-flop game where I felt like offensively they did enough to win the game. But right now it just feels like they need the ultimate playmaker. They need to go get themselves a dude who's an absolute difference maker at the quarterback position. Because right now it just feels like they're so inconsistent that offensively you just can't rely on building a game plan and sticking to it and going 4 quarters of offensive football throughout a game. Tampa Bay right now, it feels like the team that deserves to be in the lead in the NFC South. I didn't think they would be, but it feels like they're the ones that have earned it at this point in time. And a lot of that's credit to Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans.
Yeah, there was I think a penalty that was called against Atlanta early in that final drive for the Bucs that really kind of derailed everything and led Tampa to eventually score the game winner. I know Arthur Smith was really animated on the sidelines about it. I can't remember what the exact play was. But that just goes to show you too that a lot of these games and the NFL in general, you're really one play away a lot of
Yeah.
times. And
We
plays
know.
that
The Chiefs know.
yeah, the Chiefs very well know this. You want to talk to the Saints from the Saints Rams matchup of years and years ago, where that ultimately obviously led to the pass interference being reviewable, and then now it's not reviewed again. But yeah, there's a lot of times one play can dictate a lot of things. But moving forward, obviously this is still anyone's division between those three teams since they are all so close. So the pressure's on for Tampa still. The pressure's on for Atlanta. New Orleans, like it's still a must win each week for these
Oh, yeah.
teams because they can't really give up any ground to the competition. But I'm glad you brought up Todd Bowles because the question for me coming out of this is like if they win the division and go to the playoffs here and host the playoff game, is Todd Bowles, like are you going to fire Todd Bowles? It seems like that's a hard move to make at that point
Yeah.
if he gets this team to the postseason, even if it's with a
It'd be
below 500 record.
2 years as a head coach, 2 postseason runs. And so
Yeah.
I don't know how you could go away from it. Again, it feels a lot like the Seattle of last year, right? Veteran quarterback, veteran roster, defensive coach, and they're just making enough plays. Now, Seattle couldn't win their division because of the Niners, but they just are surprised enough people. On the flip side, again, Atlanta, I wouldn't give up on Arthur Smith. I don't think it's the coaching that's the problem. I think they just need a difference maker at quarterback, and that will settle so much of the waters in Atlanta.
Yeah, they're definitely their biggest hole is a quarterback, no question about it. Could probably use a dominant defender as well, but their defense has been on the up swing the last year plus. So definitely agree with that. The Lions go on the road at your Chicago Bears, and the Bears, they seem to have the Lions number earlier this year, right? I mean,
They
Jared
do.
Goff was not himself at all in that first matchup, and the Bears just kind of gave that game away and let it slip. This time, they said they're not going to let that happen, and they were able to put the hammer down and get a convincing 15-point victory against the NFC North leaders. And Bears now are 5-8. I'm wondering to you too, and I don't know if this is the question you want to address right away, or you can get to it later on in your response. But at this point, do you want the Bears to keep on winning because they are going to get the number one pick from the Panthers anyway? And if their second pick is outside of the top 10, so be it type of situation? Or is this something where you just want them to play well but keep losing?
No, listen, I always want my team to win. Like I can't deny that. I can't hide that. And because of the luxury of the Panthers pick, you're still like you have so many options. You have so many ways to add a ton of talent. Whether you take a player number 1 overall or you traded for a haul like you traded for DJ Moore. So the Bears are in a really terrific spot. I think to me the key is since the Bears traded for Montez Sweat in week 9, the Bears defense is ranked now top 5 in total defense, pass defense, and takeaways. So that alone just goes to show you, I think, a couple of things. Number 1, people are saying, look, maybe Matt Eberflus deserves a chance now. His defense is playing like a top 5 defense. I actually think this hurts Matt Eberflus. It helps Ryan Poles. I think it hurts Matt Eberflus.
Interesting. Okay.
Because I think what it is when you bring in players, when the GM gets A players, it just goes to show you that players are making the difference in this game, not the coaching. Like you had one player and it goes from 30th to 5th. That a good coach and a really, really good coach would have just, hey, we got some scrappy guys, but I'm a defensive coach. Yeah, maybe we're a 15th ranked defense and then goes to 5th. I really think, I mean, again, just because you start to win games, it's the first time Eberflus has won back-to-back games. I still don't think Eberflus should be a head football coach.
Okay, but can I play devil's advocate?
Job for another year?
Sorry, can I play devil's advocate real quick on that? Because yes, since they got Montez Sweat in the lineup, they've been really good, and obviously he's made a big impact on this team. There's no question about that. But there is like a causation correlation effect where, okay, is it just Montez Sweat being added to this defense that's made them so much better, or is it finally that like the team is like starting to coalesce around Matt Eberflus's idea and plan, and he
Yeah,
just
well,
needed the one extra player to kind of fit his scheme that,
again,
I'm just
that's a
playing devil's advocate.
valid.
I'm not even saying
No,
that's
it's
it,
100%.
but
It's 100% valid. I can still say I've seen enough to not want Matt Eberflus as my head coach
sure.
going
Yeah,
forward.
that's
I
totally
mean,
fair.
it took
Yeah.
almost 2 years to win back-to-back games.
Yeah.
And overall, again, I just don't think he's built a good enough staff, and I don't think he's elite enough as a head coach to get my team where I want my team to be. Now, if they keep him because he wins out and he does all these things, like, I'm not going to be the most angry person in the world. I want my team to win games. I want my team to be a winning franchise. And, maybe he gets it. He's earning his way to a third year. And that's just kind of how it works in the NFL sometimes. But overall, back to the actual game, I think the key is the Bears play the Lions well. The Bears have played the Lions well even through the John Fox, Matt Nagy, Mark Trestman era. The Bears and the Lions, like, it's just one of those matchups. Justin Fields has killed the Lions in his time as a starter in 2.5 years too. So I think it was just it's a bad matchup for the Lions. They were outdoors. Bears coming off of a bye week. So I think there was a lot of things negative going against the Lions. I think the Lions are still a really solid team. I think the Lions are still going to win the NFC North. I think the Lions are still going to probably win a playoff game, maybe even two. I like the Lions a lot. I just think this was a bad matchup for them at a bad time. And they lost their defensive tackle, Nichols, who's been really, really nice for them. And so they got to find a way now to work around that. The Bears took advantage of that. The offensive line played well. Justin Fields is playing really, really well. If Justin Fields could play the Lions every week, I think he'd be perennial Pro Bowl.
MVP.
It's can they do it against other teams more consistently? They're playing good football right now, so I'm a happy camper, and I'm not hating on the Lions yet. I think the Lions will be okay. This was obviously a bad loss for them. I think Dan Campbell get it turned around just like he did after their last bad loss against the Packers. Come out and they won a game, lose a game. I think they'll be fine to get right back on track. The schedule's still really workable for the Lions. Minnesota twice coming on up. Minnesota's terrible. They'll be fine in the division.
I think the Lions will be fine as well. However, that being said, of the teams that lost this past week that were really in, strong, had strongholds on the postseason, they're the one team I'm a little bit concerned about because
this would have gone a long way. Winning this game would have gone a long way for them. Yeah, for sure.
It just feels like their offense even has trended, has gotten a little cold
down
over the last month. So can they reinvigorate themselves, get back to that, spark that they've had? They obviously have the talent to do it. They've proven that they can. It's just whether or not they put it together the rest of December and into January.
My final thought on the Bears, I know a lot of people tune in for my Bears thoughts. Is, again, I think this game is a perfect example of what I've been saying all year. This team is really talented, and this team just needs to keep adding talent. Like, they were so devoid of talent a year ago. One of the reasons we were also positive and high on them going into this year is because they added a bunch of talent and they had a nice draft. Well, a lot of those draft picks are starting to show up because there were a lot of defensive picks. The offensive line now, the two tackles, you have a second-year player and a rookie in Jones and Wright. They are becoming really, really great players. Tevin Jenkins, the guard, is healthy, and he's become one of the best guards in the league. Nate Davis played okay. You need to fix the center position. But otherwise, you're starting to see this team has got players at multiple levels. I think Eddie Jackson's probably too long in the tooth, but Brisker, Gordon, at the back end, Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards are really balling out the last 4 weeks. So that's all positive. The big time signings are starting to show up. Montez Sweat, again, has absolutely elevated this defense. Now imagine if you can add another elite interior offensive lineman, another really high-end pass rusher, and give Justin Fields one more elite A-level pass catcher. You add 3 more players to this team, which they absolutely can do with 2 first-round picks. I mean, this team is really becoming on the cusp. Then you say to yourself, is Eberflus the guy to lead this team to that next level of winning divisions consistently? That's why I say I've seen enough already to feel strongly he's not. But does that mean he's going to lose his job if they win out or they turn around? I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. We'll have to wait to see what the offseason brings to them and how they finish the season. So it's good now. They got to finish 4 more games still. A lot still to prove it with Justin Fields and Eberflus as well.
Yeah, I mean, hey, 4-0 is not out of the realm of possibility. They've got the Browns, the Cardinals, the Falcons, the Packers. Those are
Yep.
certainly winnable games. The Browns going to be a tough one. They've got such a good defense, and now we're seeing how Joe Flacco is playing. But and that road game at the Packers to end the season. But if they're at a point where they're 8-8 going into that final game, there's so much to play for Chicago at that point. Maybe even a potential 7 seed or something like that. So this could get very intriguing.
I'll put it this way. I spent time on the ESPN playoff predictor this morning. The Bears can make it. They have to win out, and Bears fans have to be rooting against the Rams. The Rams are the team.
Okay.
Rams in Seattle have to kind of fall apart to help the Bears. But yeah, they absolutely still can make it if they win out and the Rams lose, I think, 2 of their last 4.
Well, I'll be rooting for the Bears next week, most definitely, since they play Cleveland.
Yeah, I know.
The Colts fall to the Bengals, and just like that, Jake Browning and Cincinnati have found themselves 2-1 under his leadership. They're 7-6, and they win by 20. They don't just win; they win by 20.
Blew them out at home.
At home over Gardner Minshew and the Colts, who were on the upswing, inserted themselves into the playoff picture. Now they're back out of it. The Pittsburgh Steelers actually jumped back in after this weekend. So it was a good weekend for the Pittsburgh Steelers after that brutal Thursday night showing. But the Bengals in the AFC North still behind Pittsburgh because of the tiebreaker. But the Bengals, if they keep playing the way they've been playing with Jake Browning, I think we're talking. We were saying that Cleveland and Cincy were like out of the picture after their injuries. Both teams right now seem to be very much in the picture here at 7-6 and 8-5 respectively.
And it's because both teams' defenses are playing really well, and both teams have offensive coaches that have come in with a guy off the street in Joe Flacco, and a young kid with a high upside in Jake Browning who sat for a couple years here now, and they've unleashed the offenses. I mean, both offenses have talent too. I mean, Njoku had a big game. He's kind of a breakout game for him, remembering how much of a talent he is. And then obviously really for Cincinnati, 2 of the best wide receivers in the NFL, plus a really solid running back in Mixon. I was shocked by this game. I predicted the Colts would come in and win. I thought it would be like, all right, Jake Browning pop, come back to earth. No, I mean, the Bengals have built a roster to win now because they have one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the league, and their backup is playing really solid football. So they're a dangerous, dangerous team. And they're playing like a team with nothing to lose. That game, the way they played offensively, taking big shots, not holding anything back. They were literally just, it's like they all looked around in the locker room and said, fuck it. We have nothing to lose here. Let's go all in. And for the Colts, they just ran into a team that just has more good players than them and are playing with house money. And so it felt like the Colts just ran into a buzzsaw of the Jake Browning buzzsaw. I still think the Colts could end up with a playoff spot. We're gonna keep going through all these teams right now, but the Browns and the Bengals have to be right now of this mesh of teams. They have to be right now the teams you'd favor to say, they look like playoff teams as currently constructed right now. Wild card playoff teams in the AFC two have taken up 2 of the 3 spots.
Yeah, Cincinnati as the 10 seed currently behind the Broncos and the Texans, but the Texans are starting to fall back. The Broncos, will see if they're able to continue their surge. There's now,
so many teams.
Wild card. Yeah, the wild cards right now belong to the Browns at 5, Steelers at 6, Colts at 7. So lot can change, and they're all the same record. The 8, 9, 10.
I know.
11
the Bills are in there.
Are all 7-6, and the Bills, unfortunately for them, in terms of a tiebreaker situation, are at the bottom of that group. But
right now, I would say
4 additional teams there.
Yeah, right now, just finishing up in that game, it just feels like the Colts, they're not going anywhere. But it felt like this was a huge momentum kill for them, and for the Bengals, it seems like now all the momentum is swinging towards them to say, why not us? You know what I mean?
Yep. Jacksonville goes on the road, and obviously Trevor Lawrence toughing it out, hasn't missed a start in his I believe high school, collegiate, and NFL career.
Yeah, he's
which
a tough
is wild.
SOB.
And he was determined to go out there after suffering a high ankle sprain. He looked pretty good. He ran a couple times in this game as well, and kind of helped, get that offense going in the second half. But unfortunately, it was a little bit too little too late as the Browns win 31-27. We mentioned it at the top, Joe Flacco and company. He's taking a drink from the fountain of youth and is looking pretty good. So the Browns get themselves at 8-5. They drop the Jags to 8-5. But, good news for the Jags is they play in the AFC South right now. And the Texans are, potentially looking at a couple weeks without CJ Stroud. We'll know more soon. But, right now the Jags still a leader in the AFC South. But, are you worried about Jacksonville, and are you believers in Cleveland at this point?
Absolutely worried about Jacksonville, but the best thing they had going for them yesterday was the Colts losing and the Texans getting blown up by the Jets. So all three of them lose, and so it was really a no sort of net loss for the Jags as far as standings go and everything. I still feel like the Jags will win the AFC South because of the way the schedule works out for them. But, man, yeah, they're not playing good football right now. The Jags offensively just don't have an identity. They feel a lot like the Bills, where it's just kind of like, Trevor.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Trevor, go. Go, Trevor. Run some, throw some, make a lot of plays. And it's just it's ugly offensive football for Jacksonville right now, where no one's on the same page. And defensively, they don't have the skill like a Cleveland to just rely on their defense to carry them while their offense is figuring it out. So they're messy. They're messy right now. I don't have a lot of faith in Jacksonville, that's for sure. Cleveland, yeah. I mean, why not? Why not have faith? Flacco looks like, because he just hasn't been playing football, he looks healthy. He looks good. He looks fresh legs. And now it's like your season's like, a 7-8 week season. Can he stay healthy through it all and have fresh legs through it? We'll see. But Stefanski's calling a game plan that works for Joe. They have weapons, and that defense is so good. I mean, they are eating people alive in Cleveland. So absolutely, you should be a buyer in Cleveland. They're an 8-win team. Can Joe Flacco win 2 of the last 4 to get them to a 10-win team and sneak into the playoffs? Absolutely. And then they will be the wild card team that every team that won their division's like, oh, I don't want to play Cleveland. Like they are going to be a nightmare matchup for someone in the first round. Joe Flacco, nothing to lose with that defense. It could be an ugly weekend for one of the favorites come wild card weekend.
This is interesting. Adam Schefter reported earlier this afternoon that Joe Flacco reverted back to the practice squad. This obviously must be a roster move, because they just announced he's the starter for the rest of the season. And he obviously, being on the practice squad, could sign with any team, but best situation for Flacco is clearly in Cleveland, so he's going to stay.
Totally.
But interesting nonetheless. The Panthers go on the road to lose to the Saints, so the Saints do keep themselves, afloat here. 28-6. Panthers fall to 1-12. New Orleans now 6-7. They got Derek Carr back, and Derek Carr probably looked as good as he's maybe looked.
Panthers will do that to you.
Yeah, exactly. So that was, I guess, encouraging maybe for some New Orleans fans out there who maybe were calling for Jameis Winston to start some games, but it looks like it's the Derek Carr show moving forward here. But yeah, honestly, Mark, not many takeaways from my side of this thing. I do feel like now that Tampa is in that spot, I might have a little bit more faith at this point in the season in Tampa finishing atop the division. Because New Orleans has been a little bit too up and down, whereas Tampa has been at least relatively competitive in most of their games. And they do just have that kind of scrappy talent that at this point of the season in December, tends to be favorable to you when you're playing some of these other teams that are also fighting for playoff spots. So I would probably at this point put some money on Tampa, but New Orleans still very much in play.
New Orleans just feels like they all hate each other. So getting a win just feels like it kind of like relieved that tension. They popped the blister, you know what I mean? Where it's like, okay, this still hurts. Nothing is great, but at least now the tension's gone and the pressure's gone a little bit. So it was a must win for New Orleans. And I'll just say this about the Panthers. I caught some of the highlights of this game. I mean, Bryce Young, I don't know if he could play in this league. Like I've been firm of saying, like, got to give him time. You build around him the way the Dolphins built around Tua. He could be that guy. I don't know, man. It is so ugly in Carolina. It is so ugly. And they have Nothing. The cupboard is bare. I don't know how they're going to start surrounding him with talent. So that is a gigantic hill for them to climb. I was very convinced that Carolina would find a way to win a second game this year. I don't think so at this point. I'm not predicting it. I'm just not going to predict it. And for New Orleans, yeah, we'll wait and see. Every week they're a bipolar, ex-girlfriend who's like, I'm going to never talk to you again. And then an hour later, you have 38 missed calls. It's up and down with New Orleans right now. Don't trust them either. I would say agree with you. Right now, I trust the Bucs the most in the AFC South.
Yeah, I would probably, agree with that sentiment about New Orleans just kind of being completely up and down all season long, and we just have no idea kind of
They need to blow it up. They
they
just need to blow
consider
it up.
themselves. Yeah, because it seems like they are acting like they are, we're just right there, but they're really not. I mean, so you hope
you can
that
just tell
at
there's
some
something
point
off. They just don't like each other. Nothing feels right down in New Orleans right now.
Zach Wilson may have had his best game as a pro.
He did. He had his best
against
game.
the Houston Texans,
100%.
who obviously we've come to realize is no slouch in the NFL this season. CJ Stroud and company were rolling coming into this game at 7-5, but the Jets get a 30-6 win. CJ Stroud, looking like he's in the concussion protocol, so we're not sure exactly what his status is for next week or even beyond for that matter. But the Jets do get a win. It was a good win for them. Obviously, they're pretty much out of the playoff picture unless they really somehow surprise a lot of people winning 4 in a row and having a lot of help. But I guess this was good for one thing, and that is Zach Wilson and, maybe putting some tape out there to show I can be a backup in this league for years to come, or maybe some other team wants to take a chance on me next season. So from that perspective, it was good. And it also shows that, CJ Stroud really was a huge part of this Houston Texans team. And, they're going to need him to get back quickly if they really want to stay in this race, because it is tight in the AFC right now.
Yeah, they can't afford. This was one of those, again, it's weird to put pressure on the Texans because we didn't expect anything from the Texans.
Yeah.
But this felt like one of those, like, oh, you really want to have this game because it is such a log jam. And knowing that the Jags probably were going to lose, they had a really tough game ahead of them. This could have been a moment for the Texans to kind of seize the opportunity. And they got blown up. I mean, it was as simple as they got destroyed. They ran into a buzzsaw. Credit to Robert Saleh. Credit to Zach Wilson. Both of them may have saved their jobs with a performance and a win like this. And if Zach Wilson can play even 70% this good the remainder of the stretch, to me, you start to say to yourself, oh, okay, you can sell Zach Wilson on staying in New York, being Aaron's backup for next year, and not having to, because it felt like you had to get him out of the room. But this was, again, one of those wins where if this leads to him playing this type of football or even remotely close to it down the stretch, you could say, all right, no, again, he's just a young kid. He's needing more time. He's not a starter, but he can be, we already have him in the building, already knows the system. Maybe he's Aaron's backup, going into next year as well. And for Saleh, this felt like, hey, our defense balls out. I'm the head coach of this team. I deserve to be the head coach of this team. So huge victory, kind of a moral victory for the Jets, even though it was also a real victory for the Jets.
It is somehow a tough road the rest of the way for Houston. They play the Titans twice, and divisional games like that,
never easy.
They probably split, right? So then they play the Browns and the Colts the other 2 weeks.
Yeah, they got to find a way to go 3-1 in division. Whether that's sweep the Titans and lose to the Colts, or split the Titans and beat the Colts, and then you can give up that Browns game, because the Texans are a 7-win team. So again, you want to find a way to get to 10 wins. You'd probably secure it as a 10-win team in the AFC as at least the 7 seed. So find a way to get 10 wins. It's possible, but they need CJ Stroud back healthy.
They need him back very, very badly. The Rams go on the road to the Ravens, a very enticing game there.
Love this game. I called it. I had my upset of the week on my Saturday show was the Rams plus 7.5. I knew, I just felt this game 100%. Ravens were off the bye. Rams are playing really feisty football. Puka Nacua, catch of the year. Cooper Kupp, big game. In the bad weather, Stafford's balling out. He looks healthy. He's playing really, really good football. And this was a moral victory for the Rams, even though they lost in overtime in a really bad way. This showed them, I think, and to the rest of the NFL, the Rams right now are a dangerous team over the next 4 weeks. You don't want to be playing the Rams. They're going to put up a heck of a fight. They're well coached. They're just, again, devoid of some veteran talent. And the Rams, this is the type of loss for the Rams. If they can stay around 500 and keep losing or winning games like this, where you'd say to yourself, the Rams might be buyers this offseason for that final run with Stafford. And who knows what the future could hold for them next year. It felt like a big kind of building block on what this year was, which was just a get-right year, all those rookie players playing really solid football for them. The Rams are one of the best coached teams in football. Sean McVay, don't sleep on Sean McVay. And for the Ravens, wow, Lamar played great down the stretch when he needed to. They could not afford to lose this game. It felt like he finally made the big plays when he needed to. And then, of course, the special teams, John Harbaugh special teams walk-off win. Nothing like a punt return walk-off, Dan. I felt so good about knowing what was going to happen in this game, knowing the Ravens would find a way to win it, but that the Rams would be very involved in this game. There's a lot we have no idea what's going on in the NFL. This was one of those, it just felt like 7.5 Rams. I knew it all along.
Yeah, no, you called it. And, they've surprised me throughout the season. I obviously was very, very low on them coming into the year. And maybe I just underestimated Sean McVay. I also underestimated the health of Matt Stafford, who, to your point, is still playing very, very high quality football. And the fact that they were able to get such an elite number 2 wide receiver, where they did the draft, just shows, how impactful that can be for a team and where they're heading. So yeah, next year they could be running it back with a clear number 1 receiver and one of the best number 2s in the league in Puka Nacua and a great young running back and a lot of talent. So yeah, fortify a little bit of that O-line, get some more defensive playmakers in there, and
bring in a veteran edge rusher to help out with Aaron Donald. You go one more year. The Rams, I'm telling you, the Rams I might have to pick the Rams to win the division again next year. That's how much I love this loss for them.
They're pretty right. They do seem that close, very much. It was a good loss. Yeah, 6-point loss to the what we consider a top 3 team in the NFL, top 4 team in the NFL.
And for the Ravens, really there's no shame. You want to blow teams out. You want to look better than that, but you found a way to win that game at the end when this Rams team kind of came out and unloaded the clip on you. That's what Super Bowl teams do. They find ways to win games. It's one of the reasons why I love the Eagles so much early in the season, because they weren't blowing people out. They were finding ways to win games. Now, the flip side of the Eagles, it's like, oh my gosh, now they've been blown out 2 in a row. Now you start to really, flip that narrative for them on the opposite end.
Yeah, there are some concerns there for sure. There's another concern I have with consulting Mark Hespin for fantasy quarterback advice. Because,
listen,
I was like, hey man, do I start?
No,
I was right in line with you. I was getting to this next game, the Vikings at the Raiders. I put Josh Dobbs in there instead of Trevor Lawrence because Trevor Lawrence coming off that injury against the Cleveland defense scared me, but it turned out that Josh Dobbs and nobody in this game wanted to find the end zone or even sniff it for the entirety of the game.
Yeah,
it was basically a game-winning INT for the Vikings, helped secure a victory, a 3-0 win for Minnesota in this one. It was a lone field goal. And what were they saying, Mark? I believe that it was the first game since the 40s to go into the half at 0-0. It was something crazy like that.
A lot of
which
awful
is,
records,
really bizarre. Yeah,
I'll say this: the Vikings officially are the team now that feels like they need to be the most aggressive in addressing the quarterback position, because the rest of the roster and the coaching staff, it feels like it's really close or it's already there. It feels like the Vikings now are an elite playmaker, a Drake May, a Caleb Williams away from being like, oh, bleep, this Vikings team now could be a legitimate contender. Hawkinson, the 2 wide receivers in Jefferson and Addison, a very solid offensive line. I think they need a little, maybe also just another really dynamic running back, kind of like a bell cow back. I think that would go well in Minnesota. But Brian Flores is the defense playing well. If he can stick around, you can keep him if he doesn't get a head coaching job. I think there's a lot of positive things going for Minnesota, except for just like they are now officially desperate for the next guy. Like they need it, and they need it bad. And for the Raiders, they might be the second most desperate team in that way for just the guy. Get me the guy, because they have playmakers, man. The Raiders have playmakers on both sides of the football, A talent, A players. I think the only thing I'll take of this win is Antonio Pierce again. I think just deserves the job. Just make it official. Like, make it official. Let the locker room rally around this guy. He is, he's going to bring, it feels like he will bring stability to an organization that desperately needs stability.
Very much so. They're probably the one organization right now that you can say is in dire need of just someone to steady the ship and get this thing put on the right track. It's kind of like what Lovie Smith did for the Houston Texans a few years back, you know,
Yeah.
and
like
that's what
Mike
he was
Tomlin to
hired
the
for.
Steelers would be perfect, but I don't think Mike Tomlin to the Raiders would be perfect, but I don't think the Raiders can afford anyone more than Antonio Pearson. They're going to have to dumpster dive for a coach, and I think one fell into their lap. He's already on their staff.
Hilariously, the John Gruden rumors have started to circulate, like him coming back to the Raiders. Like, I don't think that's going to happen.
No,
So we can put that to rest pretty quickly. The 49ers get a 28-16 win over the Seahawks. This was a good win for San Francisco, I thought. You know, a lot of people expected them to just blow the doors off of it. Well, first off, Seattle's not a bad team. They're pretty decent.
And
granted, they had Drew Lock in
out.
play. But, you know, Brock Purdy and company, Christian McCaffrey, I personally think, I know they're saying like Brock Purdy, I think leads the MVP voting right now. But like, to me, Christian McCaffrey is the MVP of this team. He has been what has allowed Brock Purdy and the other playmakers to get open and be able to go. I mean, Christian McCaffrey has really had a special year.
He has.
And he, again, showed it again in this one. The 49ers needed this win for a lot of reasons. It's divisional. You want to keep the momentum rolling, but also it became even more important when you had the Eagles losing and Dallas is starting like full steam ahead, come after the 1 seed. You keep maintaining the 1 seed. You stay in play now, and they get themselves catapulted into a position for a first round bye, which is crucial no matter what team you are to get that first round bye in the playoffs.
Yeah, I just don't think the Niners I don't think anyone from the 49ers should win the MVP, because I just think they're such a collection of talent and they are just built so well together, and they are such.
Yeah, my vote's for Tyreek Hill right now. But
I would agree. I think, and I know we'll talk about it here really quickly to wrap it up. I think Tyreek Hill's going to go off tonight. I think it's going to be a stamp moment for him. I think the Dolphins will win the 1 seed. I've been saying it for how many weeks now? The Dolphins are probably going to win the 1 seed, and I think tonight is like a kind of a primetime moment for him to, 2 touchdowns, 160 yards, 10 catches. And it's just like, this dude, he makes the Dolphins elite, and he is leading them to the 1 seed. So I agree with you. I'll put a cap on this again. I don't think the Seahawks are dead. They went through a really, really tough run. They're a scrappy team that can make a playoff run. Is that the ceiling for Seattle? Yeah, I think we knew that was the ceiling for Seattle when they re-signed Geno Smith. When they re-signed Geno Smith, we all said their ceiling is scrappy team that can make a playoff run. I still think they're that. I don't know why. I don't think there's any reason to panic on Seattle.
Yeah, I just think they would welcome Geno Smith back, for sure.
Yeah.
Because,
and this was smart of them. Wave the white flag a little bit. Let him get healthy, because the next 4 games now are your whole season. Can you win out? They can. It's gonna take a healthy Geno to do it.
Bills got their much needed win, 20-17 over Kansas City.
Yeah.
Of course, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, very upset in the way this game ended because they called Kadarius Toney offsides on offense, which is a penalty that doesn't get called very often. But to be fair, he was offsides, and it straight up is what it is. He lined up offsides, and Travis Kelce had one of the coolest plays I've ever seen. Where he lateraled it back about 20 yards to Toney, and Toney scored what would have been the game winner.
Yeah,
but it gets called back because he was offsides. Patrick Mahomes was screaming at the refs. Andy Reid in the post-game presser was not happy about it, but it is what it is. And the Chiefs had plenty of opportunities in this game. Their offense, yet again, for the 5th time, 6th time this year, wasn't able to get it done. And so I'll eat crow for this one. I thought the Chiefs were going to win handily, and instead the Bills go to 7-6 and put themselves still in the playoff conversation.
So I have 4 thoughts on this. Number one, glad the Bills won because it keeps them alive in that bunch of teams that are like, this is chaos in the AFC. And it adds to the fun of it, I think,
Sure.
overall.
Yeah, it will be
so
fun.
As a fan of football, I'm just like, I kind of liked that. Number 2, not only was Tony offsides, if you look at the still frame of the photo, they could have easily thrown the flag again on Jawan Taylor like they did all early in the seasons. He's lining up so far back still in that photo, in that still frame. It's they're just a mess right now, like offensively and getting coached up. And at this point in time, I think the Chiefs need to send a message, a strong message. And I think one of those would be benching Tony like a healthy scratch, because it is his job. The refs will tell you you're offsides if you ask the ref. He didn't ask the ref. And maybe it's because he knew in his head this was a big play.
And he was lined up close to the line of scrimmage. Like he wasn't on the sidelines. He wasn't lined up out wide next to a ref. Like the ref's going to have to like shout at him.
Yeah, and he could see the ball. I mean, he's looking at the ball in the still frame. It's an embarrassment by him.
Yeah, third year in the league.
Third point. That is the future of football. Like, if you can make it work. The laterals like that, all those rules favor the offense. And if you have talented players like a Travis Kelce who you trust, that is the future of football. Like those plays, it's 100% legal. It's really fun. It's awesome. And if you're getting creative play callers, the Mike McDaniels, the Andy Reids of the world, with talented guys who could do that, who you trust, that's the future of football. And not just on Hail Mary plays. And then my fourth and final point would be the Chiefs offense is very broken right now. And with the Mahomes tirade at the end of the game, the Chiefs have quickly gone, I think, within the last couple weeks here from, we love the Chiefs, they're a fun dynasty to root for, compared to the Patriots, it's like an evil dynasty to root for. Andy Reid, big jolly guy, eating cheeseburgers, State Farm, like fun dynasty. They're quickly becoming kind of like, just shut up. Like, it's this taste is becoming sour in our mouths, and you have all these other fun storylines popping up. I'm not saying the Chiefs are dead. I'm not saying I don't like the Chiefs anymore. I still like the Chiefs. I think they're very interesting. I think the Taylor Swift thing is interesting. I think it's really fun. But that was ugly. Like, Patrick, you're a 2-time MVP, a 2-time Super Bowl winner, and a 2-time Super Bowl MVP. That's beneath you. Like, you need to go to the sideline. You need to grab the tablet. You need to look at your player and say, what the are you doing? Don't be held back going after the refs. That, to me, is a moment, he said, I think it was Andy Reid that said this was embarrassing for the NFL. That was just embarrassing for Patrick Mahomes at the end. Like, and let's be honest, Patrick, where are you? Your team scored 17 points at home against a beat-up, injury-riddled Bills defense. You scored 17 points at home. I get it, one play at the end of the game, but you only had 17 points with 1 minute left in the fourth quarter at home.
Yeah. And in the past, if the Kansas City Chiefs were without Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Damian Williams, they would be perfectly fine. Them being without Isaiah Pacheco had a huge impact on their ability to do anything in the run game. So who's the MVP of this team currently? I mean, obviously Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league overall, but I would say Pacheco, and we've been saying this for a while, is the Kansas City offense this year. I mean, he's really the heartbeat of how they operate. And without him, they looked a lot different. And yes, they don't have options outside of Travis Kelce.
The GOAT in the league right now scored 17 points at home against an injured, beat-up Bills defense in a really kind of a must-win game.
Yeah, it was an important game, obviously. Yeah, for sure. The Broncos win 24-7 on the road at the Chargers. The Broncos now they're starting to stack. They're starting to look pretty good.
The Broncos.
And the Chargers lose Justin Herbert. He fractured an index finger. He's going to be out. So, yeah, we'll see what happens moving forward.
Yeah, he might need surgery, I was hearing this morning. I would just
shut him down. Just shut him down.
At this point, I know they just can't. Like, Staley's not going to do that. I don't think Herbert's that kind of competitor either. Miss this game because it's short rest. See what happens. Give him like the full week, week and a half off here now. Maybe he comes back, but at this point, it feels like the Chargers season is completely over. It's lost, and I think you absolutely need to clean house in LA. The only people that should feel really safe are like Khalil Mack, Bosa, Herbert, and Allen. Like those are the guys that should feel safe. Maybe Corey Linsley and
James probably too,
and Rashawn Slater, but otherwise, yeah. I mean, this has been a disaster season, and for the Broncos, I love this story. Like they are quietly just going about business, 6-1 in their last 7. They've completely turned it around. And I will just say this about Denver. They could quickly become the team in the AFC besides the Browns who you're like, I do not want to play them. Like, please, God, if you're a division winner, you're going to be looking around saying, I want Pittsburgh. I want the Colts. I do not want the Broncos. I do not want the Bills. I do not want the Browns in the wild card.
Absolutely. The Broncos are a scary team, and they can.
Well, they're playing with house money. Like this is so house money for them right now, and it feels like that. Like
their defense is playing so much better than it was at the beginning of the season, and obviously Russell Wilson has started to really click. Him and Cortland Sutton have really forged themselves a solid relationship where Sutton's being made to look like one of the better receivers in the entire NFL. So it is a fun story. I agree with that, and at this point, it would be cool to see the Broncos get back in the postseason, and they'd be a tough out for sure, especially if they somehow got to host a game the way that the Chiefs are starting to fall out of favor. They're only one game back.
I don't know if that'll happen. I don't know if
they're only one game back. I'm just saying it could happen. It very well could happen. The Eagles at the Cowboys. This game did not go the way either of us thought it would, and I know that this will close out the show for us here. But the Cowboys winning 33-13, convincing fashion. We thought if the Cowboys were going to win this game, it wasn't going to be by 20. The Eagles, a lot of concerns here, Mark, in terms of, now they've stacked a couple losses. I still obviously feel that they're one of the better teams in the league. They're going to be a team that, is still to be reckoned with in the postseason. But I obviously at this point don't have a whole lot of faith in who's going to win this division because now Dallas has a stranglehold on the NFC East. And in the meantime, Dallas is the team that might be the hottest team in the NFL. Yeah. And we talked about it, Mark. We both have to eat crow now. Dallas is the real deal at this point. I mean, there's no denying that they've got a lot of talent, and they've proven now that they can beat an elite team.
Yeah, now my hopes lie in Buffalo to just destroy Dallas this weekend because the Eagles couldn't get it done. I think this game was more about the Eagles and just like, man, oh man, the fumbles.
Yeah,
Jalen Hurts fumble.
They shot themselves in the foot a lot.
AJ Brown fumbled. Devontae Smith had a touchdown go through his hands. That game was a one-score game,
and he
dropped
too.
the touchdown, and that could have completely turned the game around. And so I'm not down with the Eagles. I'm not done with the Eagles. Yeah. But man, this was they just finished their tough run, and they went 2-2 in that tough run with wins against the Bills and the Chiefs. Losses against the NFC opponents. That sucks because it's NFC, AFC. But they went 2-2 in that really tough stretch. So I'm not by any means saying they're dead. Because if 4 weeks ago you would have said, hey, they went 2-2 in the stretch, I think we all would have said, all right, take it. Take 2-2 because that is a killer slog. And they did it. And so, listen, I think offensively, though, they can't have their big-time weapons blow up like that. They blew up that game. Devontae Smith had a bad game. Fumble, drop ball. AJ Brown, big drop early, fumble late, and then Hurts, it doesn't look 100% healthy, and him with the fumble. You're not going to beat a good Dallas team like that. And Dallas right now is the second best team in the NFC this morning. I have to eat crow on it. You're right. But I'm hoping that the Bills can rewrite the history and the future as we know it. I can't handle a Dallas Cowboys playing in the Super Bowl. I can't do it. So let's move. Let's go Buffalo.
That offense in Dallas has really come along over the course of the year. Dak Prescott playing the best football of his career, and that defense did answer the bell. I mean,
if you're giving it to a quarterback right now today, he's the MVP of the league.
Yeah, I would agree. In terms of quarterbacks, no question. I mean, he is really like the heartbeat of this team right now, especially offensively. And there's just no stopping CeeDee Lamb. He's unbelievable. Yeah. So there's just too much good going, too many things going right for the Dallas Cowboys, and some things going wrong for the Philadelphia Eagles. But to your point, The stretch was a tough one. Came out 2-2.
Turnovers killer.
Better days on the horizon, but
Yeah.
you can't turn the ball over and expect to win. So that does it for our Week 14 recap. We got a couple games coming up here tonight on Monday Night Football, and then we've got some, the Thursday night matchup. Got some games coming up on Saturday and then Sunday. So a lot of football over the next week with 2 games starting here tonight. So excited for that. Looking forward to the week ahead as we get more and more playoff scenarios starting to form. I imagine, Mark, as we get into the next few weeks here, a lot of these episodes are going to be shaped largely about these playoff pictures and how these games are starting to unfold. And the NFL does it with this scheduling. They always make some of these pivotal divisional matchups come late in the season. So we have a lot to look forward to down the stretch. So that'll do it for Mark and I. We appreciate all of the support. As always, please like and subscribe on YouTube if you watch, and check us out wherever you get your podcasts. Also on social media at FB Lounge Pod. We appreciate it once again. And for Mark, I'm Dan, signing off here on the Football Lounge. We'll see you back here on Friday as we get to recap that riveting Thursday night football game coming up this week.